We're not going to see any Straw Hats this part because we'll be going all around the world, with some very important world building that justifies the Skypiea saga's existence all on its own. So before we launch ourselves into the sky, let's take a look at a few familiar and some exceptionally unfamiliar faces, going to places all over the One Piece world in what may be one of the most world-building heavy parts of the Importance of Skypiea. As Luffy makes his way back from socking Bellamy right in the kisser, Oda decides it's time to leave Luffy and the Straw Hats and take a look at things happening all around the world. So what's a better time than to follow in that globe-trotting spirit and also cover the two cover stories that end during the Skypiea saga? In fact, let's get them out of the way, starting with the story of Hachi, the octopus fishman we first met all the way back in Arlong Park. We never actually did see what happened to Arlong's pirate crew once Luffy and co were done with them, but I guess this is confirmation that they were taken by the Marines in the end. Well, one way or another, Hachi has managed to escape, and we follow him on his journey through the ocean to go home. The first half of the journey is a little bit of a clarification of Hachi's character. He was a part of the bad guys doing the will of Arlong, but he wasn't really a bad guy, just easily influenced. He and Arlong share a mark, there's an association between them, and Hachi served his captain loyally, but even back then it didn't seem like he hated humans like Arlong did. He was friendly and helpful with Zoro after all, when he didn't know who he was. Now that he's no longer under the influence of Arlong, we see who Hachi really is. At his core, he means well. So we see him spend the first dozen pages helping people, including, albeit inadvertently, Cammy the mermaid and the starfish Papagoo. And, oh, this is our first time seeing a mermaid. We got the hint that they may exist back during the intro of Arlong Park, but this is our first time getting one properly introduced. Next, after meeting a mermaid, we see something else interesting. The Macro Fishman pirates, with their leader bearing the same sun mark that Arlong and Hachi have. An old comrade of Hachi's it seems, though Cammy doesn't look too excited to see them. Then, though the details don't seem to be entirely clear, it looks like Hachi gives Cammy over for a octopus fritter map. Let's take a quick pause on that name, the Macro Fishman Pirates. We've heard of the regular Fishman Pirates, captained by a Warlord of the Sea named Jinbei. Arlong was considered Jinbei's equal, and Jinbei's condition for becoming a Warlord of the Sea was the release of Arlong. So, with the introduction of this third group, the Macro Fishman Pirates, an old comrade of Hachi sharing the same tattoo which Arlong also has, Oda, during Hachi's cover story, is dropping hints about these Fishman Pirates, a potential separation of them. Why would there be a Fishman and then a Macro Fishman Pirates? And a mark that they seem to share, indicating that both Hachi and Arlong may have once been part of the Fishman Pirates. Either way, Hachi's on his way to find a fritter recipe, trying to impress his beloved Octopaco, and Oda again introduces another little tidbit of world building. You see, when I first read One Piece, I was under the mistaken impression that since all of Arlong's crew were male, that fishmen were male and mermaids were female. This cover story shows that no, mermaids and female fishmen, fish women, whatever their technical descriptor is, they are separate entities. Hachi makes his way to the location, thinks he's been tricked, and we see the Macro Fishman Pirates are mermaid sellers. So we learn there's a market for mermaids for sentient creatures. Ergo, there's apparently a slave market in the One Piece world. This is why you have to pay attention to the cover stories, they've always got something important. Cammy is freed, and the Macro Pirates weren't actually lying about the map they gave Hachi, though he didn't give them Cammy again, thankfully. There was a legendary source found inside the octopus. You know what, let's not question it. With all his boons in tow, Hachi is off to impress Octopaco, who doesn't seem to be of stellar character as she laughs at a destitute catfish village. But Hachi is on the case, and he exchanges his treasure for cooking equipment, feeding the entire village with his newly opened, eventually to be called legendary, Octopus Fritter Shop. Though I guess for Western audiences they called them Octopus Fritters, when really it's a takoyaki store. Technically takoyaki are a type of octopus fritters. Look, I really like takoyaki, so having them called Octopus Fritters bugs me for some reason. Hachi saves the last box for his beloved, but as the old catfish appears late to get his takoyaki, Hachi gives him the last box. He's thick, but he's got a good heart, his past with Arlong notwithstanding. As he sits in the sunset with Kami and Papagu, he remembers his childhood dream to open a takoyaki cart, and we also get another tidbit of information. Hachi was childhood friends with Kurobi, who notably also shares the sun mark. When they awake, they see that the Catfish Village have created a ship for Hachi to sell takoyaki, and we end the cover story with Hachi aboard selling takoyaki, accompanied by Kami and Papagu. And from what we've learned from Buggy and Django's cover story, there's a chance we'll see them again someday. That's cover story 1 done. We've seen mermaids for the first time, seen fish women, gotten some hints about fishman pirates, and also learned that slavery exists in the One Piece world. A pretty worthwhile cover story if you ask me. I'm not sure I can say the same thing about our next one though, as we see what's happened to everyone's favourite antagonist from the Alabasta Saga. It's Wapol's omnivorous rampage. Oda starts off the story having fun with various Wapol fusions. Tree Wapol, Lamp Wapol, Bench Wapol, Prisoner Wapol. Oh wait, no, he just got arrested. We do get this lovely scene of what happened to the former Drum Kingdom as we see Dalton, now King Dalton, helping the residents of the new Cherry Blossom Kingdom, waving the flag of Dr. Hiruluk, his dream of curing his ailing nation coming true under his banner. You love to see it. In contrast to the Cherry Blossom Kingdom's thriving, Wapol, though he did manage to escape, is now destitute. He has lost all of his kingly privileges and is living amongst garbage. He has no money and is forced to eat trash under a bridge. Though the strange creations he creates from the trash captures the hearts of children, and through his connection to these children, the joy he brings to them via his creations, perhaps maybe even this villain could be changed. Maybe he could see that instead of taking from others, from lording over others, now perhaps he could see the value in bringing joy. Things look up as a town scientist discovers that these toys that Wapol makes contain a new, unique alloy, Wapo metal, and his popularity skyrockets. Surely he'll see that he can do... The big evil is back. Wapol sets his sights on the world. Wapol did not change. If anything, he's more powerful and influential than ever. So why did Oda draw us this cover story? It's, unfortunately, not a story of redemption for Wapol. Well, we do see the new Cherry Blossom Kingdom and that Dalton is king, which is nice, and we've learned that there's a new alloy in the world called Wapol metal, so I'm sure that'll mean something. And of course, probably most importantly, it means Wapol isn't out of the story just yet. Unfortunately for us. And with those cover stories out of the way, it's time to see who else Oda wants to show us, this time within the confines of the Skypiea saga. And we start off with Buggy, sporting yet another new face paint since we last saw him. He and his crew are on some random island searching for bloody old Captain John's treasure, supposedly in a legendary cave. Except Buggy got the cave wrong. Either way, you've got to admire his unflappable confidence, saying that he doesn't mind the Straw Hat's growing bounties and reputation, it'll only make him more famous when he defeats them. Alvida, however, is less convinced. They have no clue where Luffy is. Thankfully, a friendly face is here to help. Ace knows where to find Luffy. Attracted by the smell of food, he's made himself comfortable aboard Buggy's ship, so comfortable that he falls asleep. As Buggy's crew say to capture him, Buggy shows off the real reason we're seeing what they're up to. Yes, it may be wonderful to see how our favourite self-dismembering pirate is getting along, but we are actually here to learn about Whitebeard, a man so impressive he caused Ace to change his dream to make Whitebeard king of the pirates. Buggy tells his crew and the readers that Whitebeard is the only man who ever fought Gold Roger and lived, a man of legendary strength, the world's most powerful living pirate, and the one closest to the One Piece. Never harass any member of Whitebeard's crew because Whitebeard never forgives anyone who kills one of his men. And how does Buggy know this? Well, a long time ago, Buggy met Whitebeard on the Grand Line. It's worth noting that Buggy and his crew are getting along just fine on the Grand Line. They don't seem to be in any sort of dire straits. They're comfortable and well supplied enough to be partying. Buggy has sailed the Grand Line. He's comfortable here. This so-called pirate graveyard, the place that broke Don Krieg and his armada, though they did have the misfortune of coming across Mihawk, Buggy is getting along fine despite this. And he has, at this point, a low bounty, just more proof that you shouldn't judge someone by their bounty numbers. Previous crewmate of Shanks having met a living legend and lived to tell the tale, just who is Buggy and how did he end up in the East Blue? Truly a man of mystery. But that's enough familiar faces, it's time for some unfamiliar ones as Oda takes us to the sacred land of Merijois, our first current look at the place where kings of the world gather. We are placed in a scene where a Navy man is reporting on the movements of red-haired Shanks, who has sent envoys to Whitebeard, a proposition which would be apparently catastrophic. Then we get a double-page spread of who this is being reported to. 5 men of great import, the 5 elders, supreme leaders of the world government. Let's hold on this page for a moment and glean any detail we can. With such a sudden introduction in the middle of a journey to get to the island in the sky, the lack of foreshadowing to this introduction occurring almost makes it, to me, seem almost unimportant. There's such a lack of build-up. First Buggy, then an establishing page of Merijois, then bam, double-page introduction spread. But make no mistake, these 5 are, politically at least, the most powerful men we've been introduced to. Where they are residing, royalty from around the world only visit. They are not the heads of the Marines, but the world government itself, the organization which commands the Marines, the top brass that decided to hide the truth about Crocodile's defeat from the world, rather those that have the power to hide the truth about Crocodile's defeat from the world. So what can we see about these 5? 4 of them look quite old, and 1 looks perhaps a bit younger. 2 have a visible scar, 1 holds a weapon, which I'll get to. All 5 have at least something to say. 1 dresses radically different compared to the others, but even the elder on the left forgoes his tie. It all comes together to give a certain impression. 5 who are of equal standing, yet at the same time are actually different from each other. They have a degree of individuality. Compare that to us seeing Marine HQ for the first time, everyone in the same uniform, same cloak, same stance. This is to show off the uniformity of mindset, of mission, a display of power and unity. The 5 elders, meanwhile, are seen in disagreement with one another, discussing priorities and the happenings around the world. Despite their aged appearance, the weapon and the scars give an impression of strength that these aren't mere bureaucrats and paper pushers. They have, at least at some point, seen battle, which extends to the 2 that don't have any visible weapons or scars. One of the more interesting details is the sword itself, a sword of which the guard, which I learned during the making of this video is called a tsuba, and handle look a lot like a certain cursed sword in Zoro's possession, a sword that we know has predecessors. Could this be a look at a supreme grade sword? A fitting place for it to be. A final detail is the room they're sitting in. There are these strange marks all over the walls that they don't look like paintings, and they're all uniform as if printed onto the walls themselves. It's an odd bit of decor with 7, potentially 8 of them viewable in total. You'd think in the room where the supreme leaders are sitting and discussing important worldly matters, you'd see the symbol of the world government at least. And I know we haven't formally been introduced to that symbol, but I'll tell you, this one ain't it. It may just be decor, or it could be hinting at something more. Now, what are they actually saying? There's 3 key things. Talking about Shanks, but also mentioning that his ambitions likely don't include world conquest, which seems about right based on our impression of him, then replacing Crocodile with a new Warlord of the Sea, and then preventing the destruction of the 3 great powers, of which we know the Warlords are a part of thanks to Yosaku way back in Arlong Park. The 7 Warlords, which should be 6 now that Crocodile is gone, have been summoned, and then the Elder with an impressive mustache makes sure to take notice of Luffy specifically. It was a room full of Marines that defined Luffy's first bounty, but here we see the 5 elders talking simultaneously about several major world events, balancing priorities and discussing potential outcomes. And finally, perhaps the most telltale sign of all, the Marine that is informing the 5 elders is kneeling and bowing his head whilst addressing them. This is the type of behavior you would expect when addressing royalty, not a governmental position. So this world government may call itself a government, denoting ideas like a parliament, elections, and other such things, but the reality seems to be anything but. Okay, I know I dwelled a long time on a single panel, so I'll move on to the arguably more immediately interesting set of introductions as we meet 2 new Warlords of the Sea, Sir Don Quixote do Flamingo and Sir Bartholomew Kuma. So, first off, Oda's clearly got an animal theme going on here with the Warlords: Mihawk, crocodile, Doflamingo, and Kuma, which means bear, if all the paw prints on his clothes didn't make that obvious. So maybe Monkey D. Luffy could be an 8th Warlord since he fits the criteria. Of course, their character designs, especially when contrasted with the uniformity of the Marines behind them, stand out, as is Oda's talent. But the most interesting detail is the fact that Kuma is holding a Bible of all things, not what I'd expect a pirate to be actively holding. The fact that they also are going to Marijois just goes to show that Marijois is the place of power for the world government. It is where the government is run from, where they bring royalty of the world to meet, where all the most important decisions are made. Thankfully, we get more than just a panel of these two warlords, as well as even more introductions. Truly, one of the largest information dumps of all time. Interestingly, we get to see a hint at Doflamingo's power. It appears as though he has the ability to control people somehow. The way that his fingers move, implying that that's how he's controlling the Marine, is reminiscent of how a puppeteer controls a puppet. Doflamingo does appear to be a bit of a troublemaker, laughing and making these high-ranking Marines fight each other, which in and of itself is pretty impressive as a show of power. He's only here because he's bored, sitting on top of the table instead of taking a seat. He's clearly someone who is used to getting his own way, doing whatever he wants, and getting away with it. He gets told off by a new Marine face, Tsuru, who holds an additional title of Great Advisor, as well as being a Vice Admiral, her age and title denoting a lifetime of experience. But the most interesting Marine here is Buddha Sengoku, Admiral of the Fleet and Supreme Commander of the Navy. His chest is decorated with badges and medals as he walks in confidently with his hands in his pockets, followed closely by a goat. Why a goat? No idea, don't question it. No one else seems to, despite it joining Doflamingo on the table and casually chewing up what I'm sure are some very important papers. I do like that Sengoku calls the Warlords sea scum. He's a Navy man after all, and they're against pirates. It's likely the Elder's choice that the Warlords exist, not his, despite Sengoku's high position. What's more interesting is Kuma's response to being called sea scum, which is to confirm that that's accurate, and holy moly, check out those former bounties. That's quite the disparity between Crocodile's comparatively paltry 81 million and Doflamingo's whopping 340 million. Kuma's 296 million is nothing to sneeze at either. We don't want to fall into the Bellamy trap of assuming that bounty means strength, but there must be something behind these numbers. More importantly, it gives us a new ceiling for bounties and lets us know that a warlord isn't necessarily chosen because of their bounty. If these two are circling the 300s, then there must be some other reason that Crocodile became a warlord. Oh, but I got distracted. I was talking about Kuma's response to being called sea scum. It's fairly subdued, as is the man himself. He's just reading his Bible quietly. And to agree with being called sea scum is kind of... It either implies a degree of self-loathing or agreement that pirates are scum, which means, is he not a pirate? Does he dislike pirates? Also, what's happening with his eyes? Is he wearing glasses? Not to mention that Kuma is huge. Doflamingo is large, but Kuma makes him appear small by comparison. After some banter, a third warlord shows up, this time one that is familiar, as Mihawk joins the round table, mentioning that the High Command of the Navy is the second of the previously mentioned three great powers, which begs the question, what is the third? Oda, unlike the other two warlords, does not reveal Mihawk's former bounty though. What a tease. Perhaps the world's greatest swordsman has an even higher bounty than Doflamingo. But finally, the most interesting guest at this table, though one who is uninvited, is the strange cane-wielding, tap-dancing man who appears in a window, dropping through and injecting himself into the conversation about replacing warlords. Tsuru recognizes him as Lafitte, former West Blue sheriff banished for his cruelty. So, question, how on earth did this guy break into what is likely one of the most secure and well-guarded places in the world? I saw the dudes in armor outside. This location has a fleet admiral and also the 5 elders who are at the head of the world government, yet this guy just shows up in the middle of a highly important and probably sensitive meeting? How? Also, he isn't known as a pirate, but a sheriff. Yet he says that he's now apparently operating as a pirate as part of Blackbeard's crew, but Blackbeard is a pirate all these figures have no idea about, no clue who he is, even though Ace, a famed member of Whitebeard's crew, is pursuing him. We'll get back to this though, as Oda is still not done with this enormous world tour. Because, speaking of Whitebeard, it's time that we meet the legend himself. We first get an establishing shot of his ship, enormous if the number of sails are anything to go by, with its front designed to look like a whale's head. We zoom in more now to see some members of the crew, with two of them standing out, the large fella, then the smaller guy who says he's never heard of Shanks' messenger. This messenger, Rockstar, has got a respectable bounty, 94 million, but it's important to note that even his name card labels him as a newbie, and even with a bounty that large, no one on this famous crew has ever heard of him. Whitebeard tears up the letter Rockstar has delivered, and it's interesting the language that he uses. Upstart, brat. The five elders thought a meeting between Whitebeard and Shanks would be catastrophic, that Shanks could do a lot of damage. Though they ruled out world conquest as one of Shanks' ambitions, that means that they thought he could be capable of pursuing such a feat, and Whitebeard calls him a brat. If Buggy and Shanks were on the same crew back in the day, and Buggy met Whitebeard, could that imply that Shanks also met Whitebeard whilst they were still young? No wonder a pirate so old, someone who clashed with Roger decades ago, views him as an upstart. But that's enough teasing, as we get a shot of him drinking booze, a nurse, tubes going into his nose, and a medical bag full of liquid. Then we finally get a full shot of Whitebeard, and it's clear the message Oda is trying to convey. Whitebeard is huge. As big, if not bigger than Kuma, he dwarfs both Rockstar and the army of nurses. Unlike so many introductions where we get a nice full-body shot and a name card, even seated Whitebeard's entire body does not fit into frame, despite receiving an entire double-page spread. He is larger than life, a living legend, big in more than just the sense of size. His name card introduces him as Edward Newgate, the Great Pirate Whitebeard. But the Great Pirate isn't his epithet or title, it's part of his name, it's who he is. His title is reserved for something else, a simple line, the strongest man in the world. Not strongest pirate, the strongest man. However, despite the power that Oda is conveying through this panel, he's also making another thing clear. Whitebeard hasn't got much longer. The way that he calls others brats is typical of older characters, especially when he's calling adults brats. He's tended to by a gaggle of nurses, which also tells us something about his, how should I say, tastes in women, and has several containers and bags of liquid being fed into his body via several tubes, and several medical machines in view. I'm sure he's still powerful. He even may still be the strongest man in the world. But if he requires this much treatment, even as he just sits back and drinks, then he's not likely to hold that title for much longer. We now take a look at Shanks, no longer in a tropical cave but on a winter island, albeit he's certainly not dressed for the occasion. As he tells Rockstar to come back, we get confirmation that Shanks indeed has met Whitebeard, calling him an old geezer, and then he decides that he has to do as Whitebeard says and meet him in person. And Mr. First Mate, well, I guess his name has been revealed in an SBS before this point, so I'll call him Ben Beckman, raises the concern that the government may try and stop them, and Shanks' reaction is surprisingly nonchalant, so he and his crew set off, making sure they have some excellent booze. Finally, our tour around the world has ended and we land ourselves back on Jaya, as there is one final introduction that we need to formalize. The mysterious man and several familiar silhouettes discuss Luffy's bounty, then he slams Sarquis' face into the floor as soon as Bellamy's first mate tries to start something, and the mysterious man calls Sarquis a small fry. He sets his eyes on Luffy as he makes his goal clear, he's got a reputation to make. And as we turn the page to yet another double-page spread, I no longer have to say mysterious man, as we finally get introduced to Blackbeard and his crew. Dr. Doc Q, Sharpshooter Van Ogre, and Helmsman Jesus Burgess. Blackbeard has always seemed large, but Oda has carefully hidden his size, as well as the rest of the crew's size, showing them sitting down or hunched over, or from angles where it could be plausible that they're just being framed as larger, or it makes them appear smaller. In this spread, all ambiguity is removed as the four of them tower over the surrounding pirates. The dreamless pirates of Mocktown are beneath their notice, and this man, with whatever scheme he's concocting, is so much larger, in ambition, in strength, and in presence than them two. Now we know these four, 5 including Lafitte, are associated, we're also getting a through line. Fate, dreams, luck. They even mention it here, and what is luck other than a different interpretation of fate? There is something a bit, how should I say it, mystical that drives this group of pirates. Another observation, we know for a fact that Burgess doesn't have a bounty. That much was said earlier, and Lafitte was known as a West Blue sheriff, not a pirate, so he likely doesn't have a pirate bounty either. The fact that Blackbeard isn't known also implies that he also doesn't have a bounty, and we can extend that logic to cover Doc Q and Van Ogre as well. Now, there's a lesson here for sure, one I'll cover next part, but it raises a more interesting question. Blackbeard, as we know, used to belong to Whitebeard's 2nd Division under Ace. Whitebeard is probably the most notorious pirate currently alive, and Ace too is quickly recognized. How did Blackbeard, someone obviously with a decent amount of strength aboard the crew of the strongest man in the world, how has he not received a bounty? Blackbeard is clearly more than just a big guy who likes cherry pie, he's got plans. Yet his plans aren't so set in stone like Kuro's or with multiple contingencies like Crocodile's that he's bothered by fate or luck changing them. And most importantly, what we cannot forget is that he was introduced as an exact opposite to Luffy, someone with whom conflict will become inevitable. And it seems that conflict will occur sooner than expected, as his plan to make his reputation by either killing or capturing Luffy will apparently serve as his ticket for getting into the 7 Warlords. And one final thing. Something that bothers me specifically. Why doesn't Lafitte have his own intro box thing? I was reserving judgment until I saw the rest of Blackbeard's crew, but they all get one. The 2 new Warlords get them, the Fleet Admiral and Suru get one, Whitebeard gets one, even Rockstar gets one. Lafitte gets the classic Oda full body shot introduction, but no title card, just Suru saying his name. No epithets, no titles or position. Intentional or not, it makes him stand out just a little bit more than the rest of Blackbeard's crew. Maybe it was Oda wanting to build tension for Blackbeard's introduction, but in a chapter that introduces so many very powerful characters both politically and in terms of raw strength, it could be something more. And can you believe that was just 1.5 chapters? Crazy, am I right? I didn't start reading One Piece weekly until later than this, but can you imagine reading weekly and getting this absolutely stacked couple of chapters? The culture of weekly One Piece, of agenda posting, theorizing, and so on, probably didn't even exist back then, though I couldn't say for sure. I was less than 10 years old when this chapter released. This chapter released over 23 years ago. That totally makes me think, and someone funnier than me, please steal this idea, and if someone already has done this, let me know in the comments. I'd love to see a series where someone reads One Piece and does modern-style agenda posting with old chapters as if they were reading weekly. I don't think I've got the comedy chops nor the time for it myself. Alright, that was a bit of a tangent, but next time it's finally time to go into the sky. And I'll also summarize the key themes and such from Jaya and make clear what we're bringing into the Skypiea portion. If you managed to get through this whole thing, so many words from so few pages, thank you so much. And remember, it's not I attempt new things, it's we attempt new things. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a fruitful day.